to the electric theatre.
Hey man, thanks for hooking up with me. So how you doing today?
Yeah, this is a pleasure. Thank you. Doing all right. It's Friday and we're alive and healthy and the weather's good and just kind of getting used to this what we keep calling new normal, right?
Yes, I was everyone that's associated with me. I'm sure they told you I have this new sort of like concept that I'm dabbling in called the electric theater. And what I really am trying to accomplish with this is I turned 50 last September, and I just had a lot of I guess the way I've trained my brain and what I've done, I just had these wake-up calls that I just kind of aligned with that age. Subjects like parents passing. So I really took that mile marker 50, half of 100, which I'm betting I'm not going to get to. If I do, cool, whatever. But I'm just betting because of my grandpas and my dad. No, I'm not getting there. So 50 is a big year. Anyway, what this show's a lot about that really, really interests me, and today's an exciting day for me because I'm getting to do exactly what it is I want to do with the show, and that is that, of course, I am who I am, and I do what I do, and everybody knows that, and that's the big appeal, and that's what's important, and that is my life, and it's what I've dedicated my life to, and I love it, and I wouldn't change it. But there's all these things that I've learned around the world, and I've learned by being a pirate out on the road, all these severe things that can affect human beings. And you see a lot of different cultures, a lot of different countries, a lot of different languages, currencies, these sorts of things. So today, talking to yourself, you're the first person outside my peers, musicians and so forth, that and so on that I've done so forth. So now I get to talk to someone in a field that I believe is very, very important to not only entertainers, of course, but to all of humanity. So I'm a very big supporter of mental health, behavioral health recovery, these sorts of things. So the people that helped me out with my show and stuff, they were informing me a lot of what you do. So I thought what we would do, there's so much complexity to what you do, and I understand it because I believe reading everything that you do, I believe in order to achieve what I think you're trying to achieve in life, you have to touch on all these things. Like I was very touched by the fact that after reading everything that you've done and accomplished, that you and your wife had also parented a foster child and things like this. And, as a dad, just raising a child is major, major work. So to have love and to raise a child that is not your own is a whole other level. I don't think the world thinks too much about that stuff. Maybe we ignore it. Anyway, I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm just trying to set this up. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to, go ahead and tell us all a little bit of what you do in life and the grand scheme of what you're doing. And then I just have a couple things that I'd like to touch on that won't necessarily have anything to do with direct you and I, but it's something that I'm trying to really make a difference on, and your opinion is going to help greatly. So just to start, because you seem to be a very complex person, but why don't you do an introduction, say hi to everybody, and just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do, and take your time and let's go there.
Sure. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And I guess maybe before I launch into that, just thinking about the recording, while my wife and I are definitely, the plan is to parent a foster child. I think maybe I may have not communicated it in a way that was clear. We mentored foster kids when we first met. So just a little bit of a difference there, but that's definitely in the cards for us down the line. We recognize the challenges that those kids, especially older kids, have that that are often forgotten about in our society. But I'm definitely honored to be you're the first guest outside of your kind of inner circle, and especially that you're so mindful and considerate of mental health and substance abuse support and all of that. It's, I was fortunate when I was very early on, actually about 10 years old, to realize what I wanted to do, which sounds kind of crazy. And I realized looking back, maybe it was a little dorky at the time, but since I was 10 years old, I recognized I wanted to be a therapist. And it actually came from a personal experience of mine. I'm the oldest of four. And when my grandfather died, my parents at the time, they thought, let's see if, Jeff needs any support. And they had me see a therapist. And I just loved the idea that from being asked to do drawings and talking, that he could understand what was going on for me and that it was a helpful experience. And so at that point forward, I was so focused on becoming a marriage and family therapist so that I could help people in a way that was so unique and personal. And since then, I've loved the idea that there's this transformation process that happens for people when they allow themselves to become vulnerable, that through what we call maybe weakness is this transformational growth into strength and understanding, and then this giving back to the world, whether it's through personal change or reaching out and touching others. I mean, so from there, then I just kind of, I don't know if you want me to keep going on into my background and kind of where I'm at
definitely.
now.
I mean, I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, like I was saying, and just to clarify, that the foster child thing, definitely on my end, just reading, like I was saying, everything that you do is so complex. So I think I confused that. So that's awesome though, what you were saying. But I think just, continue, like what I was reading, just so everybody knows, like, not only from the therapist and, like I'm super fascinated, and, my whole life, basically my life since I was born, I've been around, substance abuse.
Right.
It's been my entire life. I have never had a day of my natural human life where I haven't had loved ones who are involved with substance abuse and recovery and these sorts of things. And it's been my journey.
Right.
So, that's something you do help that. I read that, you help with the mental illnesses that occur down in Skid Row and help, any age limit from, I was reading from infants to adults, and these sorts. So, just basically, I just thought this would be an excellent time to be able to, use my pulpit, if you will, to, just touch on all these things a little bit, because like I said, I could read it all off from your contributions into gang activity, helping those youth involved in that sort of world, and you're all over the place. So just touch on thank you for telling us how you got interested, but give us why don't we talk a little bit about recovery, because in my world, unfortunately, again, I'm trying to make a difference in some worlds. And one thing that I learned after 20 years of touring, that there was no one there in the beginning for myself. And really, I believe, the organization I'm in, I don't believe there was, I do believe there were a few people that touched me and did check in and did say some things. But the minute I got into this business and the dream that can quickly, sourly turn into a nightmare, I would have liked to have been warned about the things that I didn't see coming. And they're not just the obvious things like drug abuse and things like this. I mean, isolation, just that word isolation, can cause everything. And it can go into so many levels, not only from depression, but to triggering relapses, these sorts of things. So I don't know, touch on the recovery aspects of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say the word isolation, I think that really hits home for me in terms of the nature of the work in mental health treatment and in recovery. It's so much about doing it in the context of another person. The recognition that as a whole, we're greater than the individual parts. And so when I first started working, I had this very unique experience where I started working with infants and then preschool age kids with severe emotional and behavioral problems, who are often in the foster care system and had a lot of abuse and neglect, all the way, kind of stepwise up to adults with severe mental health issues and co-occurring substance use disorders. And the themes I noticed were so strongly related to, in some degree, that word isolation that you bring up, whether it was, quite literally being, abandoned and put up for adoption, the absence of a parent or having a parent there, both parents there, but one or both were heavily involved in, their own addictions and not being able to be, maybe the child at the time was more emotionally isolated or developmentally isolated. And there's so much great research now in this area called interpersonal neurobiology, where we talk about how as adults, or as kids, we don't have the full structures in our brain yet to not just put words to the things that we're feeling, but also the ability to regulate our emotions and to organize our thoughts and plan for what's important for us. And that's where having that context of a healthy adult sitting across from you or just near you offers you that space. You're almost borrowing the adult's brain. But if the adult themselves is, struggling with their own addictions, their own things from their own past or things that are perpetuating those issues in the present, then that child is isolated from those opportunities to learn and develop. And then it kind of has that intergenerational sort of loading that happens from generation to generation. So, in terms of the work that I've done, even though, you and I've kind of covered the spectrum in terms of, who I've worked with and the spaces I've worked at in terms of, Skid Row with little kids, and I'm currently working with, kids who are on juvenile probation and in the juvenile hall. But the focus has really been on those with, kind of more of those intense backgrounds of isolation and, not having those supportive structures in place, and by no one's fault oftentimes, but being able to help them, and before it kind of then, manifests itself into later adulthood, where these problems can be addressed and worked on, but where you have that greater impact at a younger age to have these transformative experiences for them.
That's pardon me. That's very intense. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So this idea, this work that you're participating in, that you're dedicating your energy to, you learn all the time while doing it. So the percentage, let's call it 10 lives, 10 human beings that you work with who have ages that vary from severely young that maybe the rest of us wouldn't even believe how young this individual is that you've worked with. So of the 10 people, the ages differ, okay?
Sure.
So how many of these human beings, if gotten to early on, with your ability to understand that they've been isolated from their ability to learn for themselves their individuality? Because I've always believed, parents, being there, it's always a child's going to need an answer for something, a bug bite, a bee bite, a social aspect, a stranger coming to the door. There needs to be an awareness and an acknowledgement and, an answer to continue. And without that, it's very hard. But out of these 10 people, if you're in there and you're doing the work and they're receptive, do they have a chance to changing their behavior and having, I hate to use the concept of regular life, because I don't really believe in that. This life is so circumstantial that I don't know how there's any regularness at all, because nothing's perfect. But if you get in there, do human minds have the chance of obtaining what is necessary?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100% of them have that ability to do that. I really have not worked with a single person that I felt was, to use the unfortunate term, hopeless or helpless. That's more of a mindset than anything in my experience. Now, in my world, the challenges that I come up against, in helping one reach their full potential, and I use that phrasing to touch upon how you said, in terms of what is a regular, typical, or normal life, there really isn't one. We just talk about what is someone's full potential and how do we help them get there. The challenges that we face aren't so much the internal process or internal resources of someone, that we're trying to help build upon. It's more around the limitations of the systems that we have, whether it's our managed care systems or those that are really focused on what we call the medical model. You have a problem and let's fix that problem. We're starting to work towards more of a recovery model, which is, working from someone's strengths and what's their potential and how do we help them become fully productive adults beyond just the problem and seeing them all the way through that next phase. But, truthfully, we have a lot of work to be done. And this pandemic, there's a lot of talk around the impacts that it's had on everyone's mental health and, how it's been very problematic and deleterious for a lot of people, but there's a lot of attention now being placed on behavioral health and the ways that we've adapted our systems now to meet with people more quickly through, telehealth, through telephone sessions, through text and web-based services. But it's still, so there's some excitement in this space, but there's still so much more that needs to be done. It's really not a lacking of what's inside the person, but more, I think, on the systems that we have to support the good work that we know is there to reinforce people's good mental health and not just the physical health, that we know to be kind of a little bit more something that we respond to more quickly, unfortunately.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, it's been for me. I kind of live in my own imagination, so I'm sort of on the outside of it all. I'm completely knowledgeable. I'm not ignorant. I follow the rules, whatever rules there are. I'm for everyone. You know what I mean? I want everyone to work. But I've always felt since I was a little kid, to touch on what you're saying. And I don't know if people will understand this or whatever, but this system, the life system. I've always felt like the globe is just so natural. Okay, it's like we're planted on it. It's here, but yet we've built this system, and I just don't believe like the system was ever going to work. So we built things within the systems. It could be, manifesting things like shops to work on cars, or convenience stores, whatever it is. We built these things to occupy our mind, to get more into a system, to dumb down the fact that we're so natural. I bring this up because you're like, what I'm hearing you say is there's a lot of systems in this world that want to get human beings to be certain ways, but in reality, if you can recognize the true 100% positive potential of someone and you cater to that, and the reward for that human is around that. I mean, that person with what they're great at, if everyone gives to that, I mean, they're Olympic at that point. You know what I mean? They're gold medalists.
Right.
But on the other end, they may be completely dysfunctional on all the other things that this system has expressed that you need to be good at. So I just felt like humans in general have always been breaking out of the system, and the system has always been trying to get everybody in from the outer rim, get them in, get it all one way, but it just leaks. It's just that there's no way to get everybody and to keep building. We just keep building on the hypothesis known as life, and it seems this pandemic is really, I've been talking, I'm really not trying to make it a focus because it's just, it's so out there, right? And there's so many levels, but that's what I've been touching on. There's so many layers of this that we don't know because we're obsessed with CNN or the internet, or we're getting, we're watching this guy talk over this woman and vice versa. And then they run it again, and man, you get caught in between dinner and wow, small conversations, but the layers, I was having a conversation with someone last night in a hardware store while we were talking about what's going to happen with the babies that are going to come out of this. I mean, everybody's stuck at home for months. I mean, there's going to be an absolute fact on paper of a boom in people born into this world. I mean, that's interesting.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, that's interesting in a sense when you apply the things that the kids today. I watched this big special of this man that's in the whole world of business, and he was saying in the future, you won't be an individual unless you know how to code. You're going to have to know coding to be able to express yourself. And that's frightening to me. I was just frightened to death. I was like, oh my God, we're going inwards and we're not going outwards. But that's kind of part of what we're talking about a little bit. I don't know. I'm just the levels, the kids that are going to be born and then grown up into the world of the internet and the phones and that sort of learning, and where we will be from the learning of this. I mean, we're wearing masks, and then these kids are going to be born, and they're going to adopt that right from the beginning from people that lived it and may fear it and apply it or don't. And again, there's your system working or not working. I was talking to a friend in Los Angeles last night, or in Manhattan Beach, and they finally got to walk on the beach. You had to keep distance. You couldn't be with people.
Wow.
You had to wear a mask. You couldn't lay on the beach. I couldn't remember if he said you could go in the water or not, but I don't think you could. You couldn't lay on it. Couldn't gather with people. But he said it was really nice to be out there. But at the end of the conversation, he said there was just dozens and dozens of people by the pier not wearing masks, not willing to sort of abide by, I guess, whatever that local rules were. And the cops were there, and, it was just all opinion. And so there's your system trying to work, but human life going against and another way. So it's just a crazy time we're living in. And again, you with working, sorry if I trailed, I'm just trying to.
No, I'm really following you. I love that.
It really got sparked by you saying that, it's necessary. In my opinion, I feel like you were saying it's necessary to acknowledge, witness, see for yourself, and then cater to people's true positive potential that maybe they're not getting reward for, So that's how that all sparked where we were and took us to babies somehow. But so the pandemic, are you in your work, is it greatly affecting? So before everybody having to be home and stuff like that, your work was one way. Right now, with everyone that you work with, has the level of extremeness gone up, or are we still the same here, or has it definitely got worse in the situation of what you see?
And can I ask, are you asking about just the specifics of the work, or the individuals that we work with and the impact on them?
Yeah, more specifically, like, if you're working with Skid Row, and you're down and there's situations going on, has that escalated worse than it already is?
It definitely has impacted a lot of people. I can't say this has been a positive for anybody involved, whether it's for my team that I support, or for the individuals that we offer, therapy and services to. We're hearing a lot more stress. The challenge really is so many people are focused on their basic necessities. And when we're working with a lot of people, who come from lower socioeconomic situations, oftentimes undocumented individuals, or someone in the family is undocumented, you're really already having a lot of people teetering in not a good way with a lot of their basic necessities and life needs. And so the focus has now become so much more on that. How do we keep our apartment? How do we, feed everybody? So I'm very grateful for the program that I work with, we were able to transition to provide meals every day for the kids that they can also give to their families. But the isolation, that word keeps coming back up, has been really felt by a lot of individuals. And it took us a little while to adapt, to continue to reach out to the kids that we work with and the families. But, there was some skepticism, were these families, were these kids going to be receptive to telephone and video sessions? And to our surprise, they really have been. And I think that speaks to the isolation that they're feeling and that we've all felt with, having to be sort of locked up a bit more and not being able just to engage socially. We really, really crave that. And we've noticed a lot of the people that we work with are so focused on their basic needs, but have been very receptive to having somebody calling them once or twice a week and checking in and saying, also, what do you want to work on this week? Which I think has pushed out the tunnel vision a bit around the pandemic and the current situation to what's beyond it and what's maybe even in the future for yourself. And we're going to get through this, and it may or may not look the same on the other side, but in the moment now, what do I have agency over and what do I have control over? But yeah, we're seeing huge elevations in anxiety and depression. And then with a lot of the kids that we work with who are probation involved, with the lack of oversight from, I shouldn't say lack of oversight, with the reduced oversight because of the need to have social distancing and things like that, we're seeing less crime overall from what I've gathered, but more serious crimes are happening. And so unfortunately, we've seen kids getting, arrested and taken into juvenile hall, and the families that are then impacted by that we continue to support are very worried and stressed out with the additional layer of, are their kids going to be safe while they're in an incarcerated setting? So it's brought up a whole myriad of things that we're adapting to on a daily basis.
Wow, that's like I said, there are levels besides the levels we wake up every day. I would never ever in a million years, say that someone's rent isn't important or groceries. Absolutely. I mean, of course. I'm saying also, though, think of all the levels we don't think about. Last week, I was speaking to someone just about all the people that had contracted the virus in our local prison systems. And my brain was shot from the idea of human beings being incarcerated in an area, not being able to leave with ill people right next to them. And and then, the prison system, how it may or may not work in their favor or not with care and relief and these sorts of things. These are levels and layers that, most people don't want to focus on because they have their own in front of them issues that they have to take care of. And I think, that's what's just so mind-blowing is everyone really having to focus inward, but what is happening outward around them? You know what I mean? It's just, it's really big,
Yeah. I think at the cornerstone of, the work that we do is this idea, and ideally as human beings, that we demonstrate an intrinsic value and respect towards everybody. The pandemic is really exposing issues that a lot of people already knew were there, but unfortunately is really putting salt in the wound in a lot of ways. So, some of the disparities in terms of, like you're bringing up the jails, for example. I think the thing that probably grabs your attention and grabs mine when it comes to that is this almost lack of dignity and value and respect towards those individuals. And maybe that was there. My guess is that was there all along. It was certainly there for me, this concern of how are we treating our most vulnerable, how are we treating our most susceptible and those who maybe have the most needs. And the pandemic highlights that. But I think what's a unique challenge for us when we're talking about these different levels is, but I'm also struggling and you're also struggling, and we also, our lives are all impacted by this at the same time. And so it's nice, to show more respect and value and care towards those in need when we're doing okay, but then what happens when we're not all doing okay? How do we maintain focus and care for others in pain when we're in pain ourselves? And, that speaks to me to this idea of, well, what am I really in control of right now? And asking myself the questions of how do I best take care of myself in a way that honors who I want to be and the kind of, man that I want to live my life as. So, it's just some interesting questions and trying to help maintain my own focus so that I can be there for others and send these ripples out into the world around, remembering that I have to demonstrate respect and value to myself, taking care of myself so that I can show that to others and not put myself in harm's way by only giving without making sure that I have solid footing under myself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, one way or another, we all know life finds a way, which is a wonderful thing about life. Yeah. And, humanity has seen things like this before. We are well far away from those things, decades and decades and decades, but we're still here surviving. So for me, it's always interesting just to see what we as a population in the whole world, what we'll do about this. Try not to subscribe too much to all the insanity, but you can't help. I'm one of those guys that, I'll look at someone and I might make an assumption, but some of the time I might not be wrong. So some of what's going on in the world that people worry about and stuff, you wonder, is it all true? Of course not. But, some of it's got to be, some of it, just right. Because we've proven that. We've proven that as humans that we'll go there with conspiracy and things. There are secret agendas. Is this whole thing something like that? Why buy into all that madness? It's us. We're to blame one way or another, whether it's highly secret or it's just as plain as another life form who has no agenda but to find a host. You know what I mean? So it's all of it is very complex but very simple. And it's going to be a wonderful thing to watch all of us do what you were saying exactly, which was you're trying to show people that you can live, that you can do things for yourself, get through, go without, be, and I think that's what I'm noticing because I have a vast array of different sort of people in my life, and I'm really catching that too. Everyone seems to be at least trying to navigate through it, and give that to those that are around them.
Yeah, and what you said, I really like that. You were talking about, is it a conspiracy or is it not? And that point, I haven't heard it put that way. We're all responsible, to some degree. It's kind of all on us, one way or the other. And I think that to me that hit home because, how many of us are really willing though to accept accountability for that, and what our role is, whether it was to cause it by being willfully neglectful or ignorant to it, or by not exercising our ability to change it. And I think that discomfort is such a unique thing because for me, we talk about systems and how we categorize things and this and that. I really don't like the feeling around putting hard lines through human beings and nature and sort of our behavior. And I always look for the commonalities in all of this. And when it comes to, say, mental illness or substance use or whatever, the behaviors that we engage in, I think, really are if we can orient ourselves to this idea that everything we do is well-intended, right? It may not be the right behavior that promotes our health and our growth and a sense of fulfillment, but in that moment, anything anyone does, it's not personal to anyone else. It's ideally to give ourselves something good. And one of the unique, sort of exercises I do when I'm working with those in recovery is I actually ask them to, we together as a group will make a list of what are all the things that you were hoping to get from using, say, drugs, for example, and anything and everything. And it all goes up on the board, including, to feel relaxed, to be social, to have fun, to get rid of pain, to get better sleep, to have more fun sex, whatever it happens to be. It's all fair game. And then the other side of the board is, so what did you really get? And it's, I lost money, my health deteriorated, I lost relationships, I lost respect from others and for myself, yada, yada, yada. And so that's kind of the no-brainer sort of component of it. But it's in that moment is something really unique, right? There's this feeling of, when you're faced with that, this feeling of shame or guilt, and I'll kind of come back to that important piece in a second, but the real turn of the activity is, and I pivot everyone back to the first side of the board around what were you hoping to get? And when I ask, what do you guys notice about this side of the board? It's always a surprise then when everybody realizes these are wholesome things. These are things almost everybody on the planet wants, right? To feel better, to not be in pain, to have fun, to be creative, to be productive, to have enjoyable sex. And when you look at it that way, it depathologizes, it destigmatizes substance use or whatever the behavior it is that you want to plug in there. And so when we can recognize that we all want the same things, we're all trying to take care of ourselves. There's this great quote that's like, we're all walking each other home at the end of the day, that I think, points to our commonalities in what we do. We look beyond the behavior, and I hate to take some liberty here, but I'm sure, when you talk about all the people you grew up with and interacted with who've struggled with addictions, that you can see the humanity in them and the human being there who's really trying and really struggling. And to go back to the shame and stigma part, shame and guilt part, we know that shame really perpetuates these things. And the difference between shame and guilt is, I feel bad about something I've done. And that's, well, it's not a good feeling. If I can be with that feeling, it lets me know that I can do better. And that's an actually healthy thing to use, to learn from. But shame is about not I made a mistake, but I am a mistake. And that's a really hard thing to change, who I am. But it's a small shift there. And we see that when people feel that, when they have that underlying thought of I'm a mistake, that relapses happen more often and more severely, people then will isolate themselves more, because if I can't change, then I don't want to be around other people who point out how bad I am, whether through their actual words or just through the ways that they tiptoe around me or always focus on, what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So, so I hate to kind of ramble on and on about that, but what you said about how we're all responsible for these things, it really just got me thinking about, this commonality and what are the barriers there for us to sort of recognize that and move forward with it.
Well, that again, yes, that's the whole of it. So with that said, the way I look at that, I've always had this like weird concept with me in life. I've been fortunate to learn and live empathy, not as a concept, not just as a word in the dictionary, but to apply it to my personal life with someone who is very sick, very ill, and being able to apply empathy to my life and realize I'm not dealing with that person, I'm dealing with a disease, and be able to have the patience and the actual reality needed to be able to, I guess, deal or live with someone who is sick, So I've always thought, empathy is something we just don't teach, and it's insane that we just don't teach that. And I've always felt like in first grade, if they took us not to the zoo, but they took us to the morgue, how kids just say the truth. They're not scared unless they have to be. They just say the most beautiful things. So it's like, take the kids to the morgue and with a real person. We're all going to die. That's the one thing. We die as infants. We die as toddlers. We die as young adults. We die as, older people, whatever. But if you take us there and the teacher says, well, what do you think, Cindy? And it's like, well, Mrs. Johnson is so cold, well, this is what, that would be an in, I feel, to understanding. We all have one likeness, and that's death, unfortunately. I believe some cultures don't ignore it. I believe we do. But if we could become more in line with that, we might be able to understand the human condition a little more, which would make us innately understand empathy. Because how many people in this world can look at an animal that needs to be put down? Take a horse, for example, who breaks its leg and it's never going to heal. A human will say the right thing to do is put this horse down if they have to. I'm saying if they absolutely have to, we can do that. We can have that empathy and just know it. It's built in us. Empathy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's part of who we are before we built this system. So when you do develop empathy, I'm still working on it. It's not anything you can just develop overnight. You got to catch yourself in the situation and be able to stop yourself and apply what you've learned. It's very difficult to change that behavior. But like you said, if an adult isn't there at the right time and a child makes the wrong decision and there's shame involved, I mean, it's most likely, like you said, those people are going to avoid other circumstances because of that shame, because and it's a mistake. It's like you said, everyone's trying to do something and it's for the better good of themselves, but because of no communication, guidance, maybe nothing, boom, they make a wrong mistake, no help, feel shameful, can't get through it. It adds up and everyone around, and we got a big problem. But I really do believe, I didn't feel like I was someone that could have empathy because of what I had to grow up with, that I didn't ask for. I just had to grow up with it. I'm just a kid growing up with things and having to deal with it as it goes. It wasn't until I was older and had other loved ones who had more severe attributes in their genes that I had wonderful people in the world help me with not the concept, but the actual entity of empathy, and it's changed my life to be able to work with people when you can recognize real stuff like that. Am I making sense with some of that?
Yeah, and is it okay if I ask you a question about that?
Please.
That's me being a therapist now.
No, please.
Full disclosure now. No, so I really love those moments where somebody, you can point to, okay, that's when I was able to really feel something different. And you talk about this, external thing or external sort of experience of, you encountered others who, from your perspective had things kind of, more intensely sort of impacting things that were impacting them. And while that's definitely the catalyst for it, I think there's always something internal that I love to always look for and bring to the surface of, what do you think for you was that, like, maybe internal thought or feeling that made you ready to receive that external cue, or that you, once you were sort of in front of it, that then you took, like, what was that internal process that made you realize, oh, okay, there are people in worse situations than me, and this kind of changes the game and how I'm looking forward from here? Like, what was that like?
Well, for me, it was a very easy epiphany based off of the simplest concepts of all, which was basically just love. So being involved in situations that I believe are mind-rendering for my own existence, when I can think of any one situation that I was in, anger, fear always was first. Fear, that primitive instinct of something being awry, sensing it, not unlike a dog, just knowing. Then pain sets in, reality. And the pain can surface so quickly and go down corridors unknown that anger, for me, was what hit hardest. That's what I've had a problem with my whole life. So anger would hit, but in the end, as my life went and I got with people who had more, what I thought was more severe genetic diseases, that I had to learn about and navigate through, inevitably, the fear will never go away, but the fear is because of love. It's because of my fear of losing someone I care for. It's the love of knowing that person may not be using their 100% positive potential to receive the life they were given. And I say given because no one has a choice. We are given life. So when you see special people that you love and they're not living up to their potential, you have to be able to stop and say, love makes me see empathy. Empathy makes me realize this person is sick at the moment. I need to navigate it with love and empathy, and just realize there's a patience that's needed. It's a real thing, and it's almost fascinating when you can get into it, because you can alleviate anger. And for me, anger is extremely painful. Extremely, at this age, I don't want it. I don't want anything. I don't want any rage or any of that. So, it's interesting for me, but through this research, through this transformation of my own life, behavioral health, I've had this discussion recently. The minute everything hits the fan for me, which is at least a couple times a week, I, for one moment, am selfish, just for a moment, because of fear and things I can't control, because you can't control anything. I want someone to wish they could see me, see what I'm dealing with. But the very moment that's happening, that I want someone to feel sorry for me or give me the moment that's happening, I realize that there are an uncounted number of human beings that have situations in their life that would bring me to my knees, and I would make an offering of anything I could to help them in their situation. So to answer your question, what it was like is it's been beautiful, because in the end, you and I could be on a mountain. We could be overlooking all this beautiful land, and it's just 23 hours of just what we feel like is God, just beauty and all this stuff. But then we could come across the squirrel that we saw earlier, and it got smashed by something. And now we have to go there. But that time for that more negative aspect in my life has been there minutely. I've maintained more positive, but I can't help to think that when I start belly aching, that there are humans who have spent more of their time in complete agony and not had a positive situation. So I'm, with my show and what I'm doing and why I'm excited to talk to you, is we get to touch on all these. We could talk for hours, we could talk for days, we could talk for months. The good news is we're going to talk again, and we'll be able to pick up where we are. But these are the things I'm trying to address, because I feel like my fans out there, I'm so close to so many of them, and they're so important to their own existence, let alone my existence, our existence together. And, there's not one without the other. We both need each other. But, I look in and I see what I think is the majority of things. So I want to be someone who can tap into talking to one of my peers and really going in deep on dream making, and then be able to also go into these worlds, because all this, behavioral health recovery, mental illness, the homeless, people that are in gangs, all of it's relevant to all of us. So the more we all can learn and the more we can apply things. I love that you brought up the idea of shame, because I believe, the art form that I express is pretty extreme. So we have an extreme culture, and I've met some really extreme people I've met a lot of people who have a lot of shame, and music, the vibration of music helps them have a moment, because they don't have to explain what they went through or what they're going through. They can just live in the moment with others that need to get out the same thing while that vibration's hitting them. So I really appreciate shame. Next time we talk, we'll begin with that. The word shame today, maybe isolation, empathy could have been a couple of our scenarios. Maybe next time we hit some shame and guilt, because that will help. Anyway, let's hit on just one more thing or whatever. So what's your day look like for you as a human being? You get up. Do you have kids of your own? Do you have a dog, cat, parrot? To end it lightly, and what's your world's complex, so you have to have your balance. You have to. Are you a gardener? Something like that. What do you do to help keep your love and your energy for what you're doing? What do you need on the outside to help you continue that journey?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And it definitely caused me a moment of pause. I almost wish I could take more time just to really let that sink in. But, because I feel like it's such an important question, and I don't want to get it wrong. But, I guess I'll do my best, as I suppose all I can expect from myself.
Now I'm playing therapist.
Yeah, I love it. You put me on the couch, and it's always a good place to be. I don't have pets and no kids yet. That's something we're hoping for in the near future. But my wife's a psychologist, and so we we're in the same field, and she actually works at a children's hospital. And so we love, just kind of talking shop and thinking about how to really help others. I've moved actually in my current role into supervising a team of therapists and providers. And so something that's been kind of a new growth area for me is how to really manage in a way that's inspiring for others. So where I was helping to really encourage people in a therapeutic setting to be inspired and to grow and become more independent. Now I'm doing that with a team of therapists, and it's a really unique thing. It's been challenging. It's been fun. It's forced me to, I think, embrace new training and recognize that I don't know everything, which is not the easiest thing to do all the time. But yeah, we definitely live in a beautiful area here in Southern California. So, we get out on, exploring all the new trails in our area. I'm a big rock climber, so, I try to go out and, challenge myself in that way too, which was always a surprising thing for me, not being a very coordinated or athletic person, that climbing was something I just kind of loved. And I'm okay at. I'm not going to say I'm any good at, but I'm okay at it. But
rock climbing has a rather, I've always respected that, and I know why you do it. And I like that you say you're average or whatever, but you probably, from the outside looking in, you probably do it because what you do has such severe responsibilities on decision making. So you grab a rock, you miss, boom, splat, all the way down on rocks, hurt, bones broke, make it up, hard challenges, hard decisions, this way, that way, both ways, division of weight, space, time, sweat, oxygen, get up there, navigate through all the problems. Probably why you like it, because you're maneuvering sort of that complexity of a mindset. Anyway, I'm sorry to interject that. That's fascinating.
No, it's funny you bring up that sort of visual of splat. Well, I love climbing because for many reasons, but one, I have to be so in the moment, and the second I'm not, and my mind wanders somewhere else, which it's likely to do, all of a sudden that's when fear creeps in, and that's when uncertainty and doubt come in. But and that's where you can make a mistake. But actually, several years ago, did have a climbing accident. I was dropped by my partner, who was lowering me off of a climb, and so it was one of the things where I had no control, and it was a really interesting kind of experience for me. And thankfully, I was okay. I walked away pretty uninjured. But that was actually so it's just fascinating you bring this up and the timing of it. A moment in my life that I had to really reanalyze and prioritize what was important to me, not just because of the kind of life and death perspective. I actually made the mistake if I can call it that afterwards, of, actually when we were mentoring these foster kids, I took myself to the urgent care, got x-rays, and then picked up my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and we drove down to South Central LA, took the foster kids out to dinner. I went to work the next day. I was running a brand new phototherapy group down on Skid Row, and just was rushing. I was rushing through life. I wasn't paying attention, and I clipped the corner of a car with my car at that point, but I still went and I ran the group, and on my drive home, I had a breakdown as I was driving on the freeway. And I pulled over and I actually called my therapist at the time and, just said, I'm struggling and I need help. And she kind of helped me realize I was not just in shock at that time, but how much that shock was pushing me into some unhealthy habits of mine that were well-intended, but were to push harder and to drive harder, and we talk about fear and pain and anger, those are really things that push action and get us ready for something, but it may not be what the situation is calling for. And so for me, it really lined up well that then I kind of discovered this world of mindfulness and how to really think about what is a moment really calling for and what do I need to give myself that's, in my best interest and now, but in the long term as well. And so I've slowed down immensely. And it's had some kind of fun things that have come out of it for me where, I don't, whenever I hear that thought in the back of my head of, fuck it, or don't worry about it, it'll be fine. I use that as my moment to like slow down and double check. And, if it's climbing, I'm double checking my knots or my holds. If it's in the real world, I'm not letting my glasses hang off of my shirt when I go to use the urinal, so that way my glasses don't fall off my shirt and into the urinal. Things like that where I'm being much more attentive to things and taking care of myself in that way. But it's a lifelong process. At least it has been up until this part of my life.
What about, let me ask you this, since that day that happened till this day today, have you ever let another person let you down off of a rock or whatever you do? Have you ever trusted like you did that day that you got dropped? Have you since then done that again?
With that partner, no. But with actually my main climbing partner, is my best friend. I knew I had to jump back into it. I knew I had to rip the Band-Aid off and go through it. And I still can't shake that trauma imprint in my brain of that little bit of jitter when, your stomach kind of drops and you get that free fall feeling in gravity. But it's a more active process for me to say, just trust the process, trust your partner. So I knew I had to get back into it. I've been doing that for years now. Otherwise, climbing by myself, it's an interesting thing, but it's just not quite the same thing. I love the social part of it too, and the pushing yourself and supporting others to push themselves is just a really exciting aspect of it that I didn't want to give up.
I'll share something with you because I think it's important what you said, and I can align something for my culture as well, because that's what we're doing here. And then maybe, that could be it. Unfortunately, our family, we lost our youngest daughter. It's actually going to be a year in 3 days.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
So thank you. I'm just now really making an attempt to like bring it up because I have to. I've been in my own head now well too long now, and I have to practice, getting it out there. But what I want to share with you is several months back, my band, we were going on tour to South America. Mm-hmm. And I was having to run around the night before to accommodate people who I feel could have accommodated themselves, knowing that I had to get myself ready and, go on a several-week tour out of country. So anyway, I was at Target, and I had a breakdown before we parked, and I was with a friend. And I never do this, and I don't know how it happened, but I was bringing a friend to Target to get her all the things she needed to watch the house and and do some things. And I don't know what hit me, but I completely broke down and was completely, life was out of my control. I was just nothing. And I looked at my friend and I'm like, sorry, pardon me, I have to make a call. And I made a call to my doctor, my normal doctor, my physicals and all that. And I love this man, and he's one of the wisest men I know. And I just want to share this with everyone because it's really important. And it's kind of like you having to get back in it, knowing it. So I called him and I just said, look, I'm just going to break it down. This is what's up. I've had it. I'm not going to South America. I'm not getting on a plane. I can't be in a lounge. I can't be around people. I am so far in my head that I'm going to snap. I can't. I'm really alone. Like, there was a lot of things, right?
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not asking for drugs because I don't believe in that, but, I need help. What do you suggest? Do I go slam some NyQuil, some nighttime NyQuil, go to bed? I'm not asking, but look, man, I'm there. I'm there, and I need help, and I need you to tell me. And you know what he told me? I told him I was not going. I'm like, I'm not going. I'm not getting on the plane. I'm not doing anything. And all he did was tell me to go. And I said, excuse me? He goes, get on the plane. I'm like, I told you I'm not getting on the plane. He goes, it's the basic human instinct is to move. You need to move. You need to move forward. You need to move forward. Get on the plane. The plane will take you away, and you'll spend the whole time wanting to get on the plane back. And the minute I got up the next morning, the anger was there because of the fear and the anger. And I didn't have the pain yet, but the anger, because I'll be damned, anyone's going to tell me what to do. I've been giving my life to my band for a long time, but I love it. It's my dream. But you know what, man? I went, and every day I earned home, and he saved my life at that moment. And it was the hardest thing. He did no medication, no pat on the back, nothing, just human straight advice. And believe me, I was at the weakest point, and I trust him and love him so much. I said, I'll do anything not to feel this way. And he's like, okay, then get on the plane. And I meant what I said. So I did anything, and doing anything was getting on the plane. And I wasn't happy, and I was mad, and I didn't settle down. I was very angry when I got there, and I saw everybody, and, hi, and hey, this is good, blah, blah, blah. And I was very angry. And, of course, I get on stage and share my time with all the beautiful people I love. And that is the best medication of all. And he knew that. And that's what I needed. I needed to be with my people, my culture, us together, expressing what we're going through, in this inner rim called life. And so I knew I had to get back into it. I didn't know exactly what he had planned for me, but, getting back engaged in the things you fear and have moments of depression with can really help you embrace more positiveness, to embrace that fear. Because I think we've been doing it forever, right? We've been running from lions and lightning and, earthquakes. We've been surviving forever. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you a little bit.
No, I mean, what a great experience to share. And it's so complex and it's just so unique in that for 9 different humans, they could have 9 different approaches to it. But to me, what stands out is you had this person who you trusted and who you opened yourself up to. And that for me is, what has always stood out as for therapy for me. And whenever I've had to say, transition someone to another therapist, or I've left a program and had to go somewhere else. And, I always say, we might all look a little different. We all sound a little different. And, not everyone has an awesome beard like I do, but, we all do the same thing. And what we really do is we reflect the best part of you back to you. And that's what I hear in your story is this was someone who knew you because you trusted them. You allowed yourself to be to say vulnerable with them, they knew the best part of you, and they're able to reflect that, and you were open to it. And you might have gone kicking and screaming, but you went, and nobody forced you. Yeah.
It's important what you said. He knew. He's like, get on the plane, but really what it was get on the plane because your ass needs to be on stage sharing your love and your pain with the people you love who have love and pain. And when I got on stage, it took 3 days to get there, but once I did it, I was on my way. And, I was able to see the important things. I took my youngest son with me. We got to go deep sea fishing, caught sailfish and, mahi-mahi and all these things. So I was able to realize that I'm in a deep internal pain over some things that I'm dealing with in my head that I can't change. My daughter's passing. And, but yes, trusting a human being, he was my safety plan and he came true. He was on the paper, my safety plan. And he's, getting up to 80 and seeing the world. And he's like, get on the plane. But his end game was, if I get on the plane, I will be on stage. And then I get to be with the people I love the most besides my, my own family. What I love the most is giving my pain through performance and having it be adhered to others who can associate their energy with it, and we all heal. We all get a moment, and I'm so privileged and lucky, or I'm so lucky to have found music in my life. I mean, even right now, music is allowing me to speak with you, and I think we've learned a lot and got to express a lot. Well, again, it'd be really hard to hit all the facets of your life. There's just the complexity is beautiful, I have to say. So we're going to definitely talk again if you wish. And we'll pick up on some other subjects and we'll build off of these ideas of ourselves because there's going to be a lot of people checking this out and they're going to have a lot to say and we're going to have a responsibility to continue it, I think. So I just want to thank you very much for taking your time out today to speak to the clown.
Clown, thank you. It's been just such a privilege and an honor, and I deeply respect, what you're doing. And when you talk about, getting up on stage and sharing your pain, that's what music's always been for me, and what I've always associated Slipknot with. And so it's just impressive the way you're doing this in such an authentic way and allowing for differences of perspective and opinion to be there. And I would love nothing more to engage in this, another time with you. It's just such a fun, unique thing to be able to do, even though we've never met in person, to be able to connect and understand each other on a different level now. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yes, we are going to do this again. And next time, so you have until next time, and there will be a next time sooner than you think, because once this goes up, you're going to have your fans and we're going to have our fans together for what we're talking about. And there's going to be a lot of issues to discuss. But until then, you have one sort of job, journey, treasure hunt, and that is to maybe find those obscure little things that really help you continue. For example, my wife says I drink too much coffee, but it's ritual. See, I only sleep 4 hours a night, so I have this whole agenda of what wakes me up in the morning, and it's the way I shower, it's the way I laid my clothes out the night before. It's a whole thing. So you have a lot of things besides rock climbing, just little things. So you said you wish you had more time, so I'm giving it to you. Next time we'll hit on some of those things.
Great, I'd love to. Yeah, I can get obscure. I've got you.
All right, good. Well, I'll give you time for that, and like a lot of people don't know, all I've been doing this whole time for 50 days is working on my yard and garden. I've just been working on tomatoes, man, the whole time.
Well, it's funny. I was telling Britt about that Rolling Stone interview you did, and I thought that was hilarious. I could totally picture the scene. I love that.
That's what people are like, I'm telling people because we all have that. Every one of us is trapped right now in our own mind. That's really the only isolation we're in. As far as walls, there are so many things in the system we've put on the walls and around us, from the rug to the TV to Netflix to our phone. We can go anywhere. We can do anything. We can change our world at any one moment. So
Right.
I think it's funny when, like, people are like, what? You know, Blue Jays, Cardinals, what are you talking about, clowns? Like, listen to me,
it's
man.
the absurdity of it. Yeah, it's the absurdity of it that I love.
And I told people I made fire, and I think people might think like I'm freaking out, like it's the end of the world. No, I was like, wow, I'm cleaning my yard. There's a lot of dry wood. My brother-in-law came over and he's like, you need to learn how to make fire. And I couldn't believe how freaking hard it was. And so and I think it's important that I tell people, like, hey, I'm the clown. I get up on stage. I play surfacing. We get into Spit It Out. Did you know I struggled with fire making? You know, it's like, it's super important to share this, because like you said, how are we going to get rid of the things we hold on to if we're unable to move through it? So with me, I'm an only child. I've really not given a lot of myself to the world. I'm not sure the world really wants my mouth. We're going to see, but I figured I owe it to myself to express the things I want to communicate a little bit more without judgment, and just have. You hit on something very important that I'm hoping people hit on. I've never met you. You've never met me. We were put together and able to have a real human talk. And I think that's important for all of us. So hopefully people adopt that. So I really appreciate your time again, man. This has been I've had a great time, and I can't wait to do this again. We'll even get it on the schedule, 3-4 months, something like that, but we'll check in again. All right.
I'd love to. And thanks again for doing this. It's exciting, and hey, however the world responds to this has been just fun for me, and and I'm sure good for the both of us. And just keep doing it. It's good to send these ripples out and see what comes back.
Oh man, I love it. You're right. Ripples, ripples, ripples. Let's see what washes ashore. So, all right, man. You have a great rest of your day. I'm gonna go plant a couple plants. You go plant a couple mental seeds and help the world, and I'll talk to you very soon.
We got this. Sounds good. We'll talk.
Bye, man. Peace. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.